The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are not those of New Zambia or its employees, but of the presenter and the respective guest. The New Zambia podcast is powered and proudly brought to you by New Zambia Media.
Hello and welcome to the New Zambia podcast, and I'm your host, Wezi Nyalazi. And in today's topic, we are talking about youth participation in governance. And joining me today is a very special guest who's a law school graduate, former president of the University of Lusaka Law Association, and former president of the Students' Law Association of Zambia. Welcome, Moses, to the show.
Oh, thank you very much for having me here at New Zambia. I hope to have a very fruitful conversation with you this afternoon.
We're glad to have you.
Thank you.
So, without wasting much time, let's step right into it. As a youth, obviously, how optimistic are you in the Zambian youth participation in governance?
Well, I think this question has now evolved, or rather the answer to this question has somehow evolved from back in time. Youth participation in governance as we speak now is quite important, especially looking at how the dynamics of many aspects of our society have changed and how the youth have taken over the majority population in this country. I feel youth participation is very important, and I'm quite optimistic in looking at how the youths of the country currently are engaging in multiple activities that are not only bettering themselves but also bettering their communities around them in many aspects. So I'm really quite optimistic for the next coming few years about what the youth really have to bring to the table.
Okay. Yeah. So what role do the youths play in a country's governance?
Well, the youth, like any other member of society, have got roles that needs to be played. Well, let me put it this way. The youth as a sect of society are usually the vibrant voice for the people. So we've seen from time immemorial how the youths have used their voice to speak on issues that really matter. So let's talk about, for example, if there isn't proper healthcare. Usually we've seen from the history of Zambia that it's always been, for the most part, the youth that have engaged government in many ways. I mean, not to glorify anything, but one of the most effective ways that has proven that the youth play an important role in a country's governance is by the way they usually take to the streets to make sure that the voice of the people that isn't heard is actually heard through them. And I think the youths play a role that mainly just speaks to what needs to be addressed without any fear or any form of bias.
Now, you've talked about being the voice, and obviously voices heard at different levels, and voices are presented at different levels. What's your take on the fact that in as much as we say, or there is a common saying that always goes like, youths are future leaders. When do you think is the future, and why don't we see youths in positions that society has, for lack of better terms, put it or made those positions to be for those people that are obviously been in the industry or the old blood, for lack of better terms, if I may use that word? What do you think is the reason, apart from the example that you posted concerning youths going into the streets, or maybe to just to air out their views if they feel like they are not really being heard of what they're trying to communicate? So what do you think is the issue with youths not really being in those positions, key positions that can actually advocate for youths, as well as being like a bridge?
Okay, so I feel there can never be, I think this is one issue that has always been raised by youths, most especially, to say, why isn't it that we are not really involved per se? So I feel this subject is sort of, well, for the most part, youths are a sect of society that that let me use your term as well. The older generation rather thinks of as people that are too impulsive. So you're looking at youths that are looked at as though they don't really know what they're talking about in some sense, and that's from the perspective of the old blood. Okay. But if we look at how a society really operates, you find that most of the decisions that are made affect the youths more than the people who are actually making these decisions. So I think one issue here that that needs to, or rather the perception that's on the ground is that the youths lack experience in what they're talking about. The youths are sort of too ambitious in some sense. So you find that, let's say for example, there's this big portfolio opened up. I mean, it's only reasonable that you would want to have someone vibrant, someone who is willing to take up the challenges of that position and wanting to make a genuine difference. But what comes into play for the most part is the fact that you've got people who've been in this system for quite too long. And our system allows for older people to stay in those positions for a longer period. So what you find is that by the time this youth comes in to sort of air out his vision or what he intends to do for this position, it would almost seem as though they are at the back of the line. So in as much as people would want to push for the agenda of the youths and having the youths sort of make the type of change that will benefit them, it becomes a bit challenging because with the way the structure is currently, it becomes challenging for them to sort of to be engaged in those portfolios.
Interesting. Yeah. Now you made mention of experience, so let me connect it to time, experience and time. Do you think there is a thing as a right time for youths to be found in those the key positions, or for them to gain experience, for them to be? Where do you think they would get that experience if they're not given the platforms to showcase what they have and what they can bring on the table? Do you think there's a right time for them to be in those situations if experience is a factor?
Well, one thing I can boldly say is that I don't really think there's a right time. Okay. I don't think there's a right time for when a youth can be able to take up certain challenges in their lives. I think this has been evident throughout history. We've had young people doing a lot of impressive things in multiple societies. Yeah. So I feel the best way to handle this issue of lack of youth involvement is to critically look at how well braced the person is in the type of sphere that they want to engage in. So I feel if a person can be able to show competence, maturity, and adequate leadership skills, I feel an opportunity is always something that can be granted to them. In as much as it won't be given to them, but at least an opportunity to be heard is really desired, because you find that for the majority, youths usually tend to speak from a genuine point of view, without any reservations. So I feel necessarily there's no right time for youths to take up certain positions.
So with that being said, do you think youth participation in Zambia has been fully utilized?
Well, to say fully utilized, I mean, that's sort of an objective question, because you find that in various sectors of society, you find that there's a lot of there are a lot of revolutions going on, especially in Zambia currently. We've seen, I'm sure, even with these current elections that we're having, we've seen that a number of young people have sprung up and taking up these leadership positions. And if you notice, there are a lot more youths who've decided to not even seek political party backing, but they've decided to go for their dreams and try to ensure that they achieve what they envision for themselves and their communities.
So how far do you think we are from getting there?
Well, like I said earlier, it's an objective question. So let's say, speaking from maybe let's say the government's side, they would say, I think we've included enough youths. And then speaking from the side of the youths, you find youths saying, no, we're not really included in this matter. So I feel the best way we can sort of try to bridge this gap is by ensuring that the government pays a listening ear to the youths and really hear their concerns. Because, sometimes it may not really be about governance. It may just be about how the type of environment these youths are in. Because they may be crying for youth involvement in governance, but then thinking when there are youths involved, it may have a ripple effect on them. But that's not really how it works. So sometimes it's maybe more than just youth involvement in governance. So it could be more than that.
Okay, so there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. So before I let you go, Moses, do you have any commendations for both the system as well as the youths?
Well, for the system, I think I would like the system to be more inclined to the people, not inclined to its agendas. I know the system has a structure which cannot be bent by anyone for whatsoever reason. But I feel that people who hold certain positions of influence need to take heed to certain hints, especially with regards to how society is moving and evolving, to make sure that all the policies that they have in place are being reflected with the type of change that's being demanded on the ground by the people, and not only the youths, but by the people as well. So I think for the government, I think it's time to have a listening ear and make sure that they incorporate as many youths and other sects of society in ensuring that they meet their targets and policy and as they implement their policies.
So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, once again. And any other words that you'd like to say before I let you go?
Okay, well, maybe I could go back to your earlier question, and I would like to reiterate that I'm really optimistic about Zambia's future. I feel what's happening right now is sort of unprecedented. We have people that have shown the Zambian youths that anything is possible. I mean, we have the likes of Patson Daka doing great things. We've got new councillors that are coming in, stepping up to the leadership podium. So I'm really optimistic about Zambia's future, and I feel we've got an eye for the type of country we want to see for ourselves. So I'm really optimistic.
Okay, that's very good. Now, obviously, there might be someone out there listening on the other end who would like to connect with you through social media, or just to get to know what you're up to. How can they reach you on social media? What are your social media handles?
Okay, so my Facebook name is Moses Strongo, and I'm also on LinkedIn. You can find me under the handle Moses Strongo as well. So I don't think I'm really hard to find. It would just be a bit challenging if they don't know how I look. But yeah, those are the two handles that I would really like to connect.
Okay.
With people.
All right. Thank you so much, Moses, for coming through. It's been an honor to have you here.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure being here.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Until next time, this has been Wezi Nyalazi on the New Zambia podcast. And bye-bye, and God bless you.